And maybe a little heavy way to start the podcast. But that poem also has a special meaning to a certain group of people in the Navy. And those of you that know what I'm talking about there, you know what I'm talking about there. And it's a poem that I thought of often in my career, especially when I strapped on my gear and heaved on an overloaded rucksack for a long patrol or march. And when you do that, any soldier or military man will tell you this, that when you do that, that is one of the most demanding parts of the job. The ruck march, the long patrol, the hump, the little walk, the forced road march. And even though you're with a group of people, when you do that, when you're marching, you're very much alone. You're alone with your thoughts. And there's things that you got to think about. You got to think about your field of fire. You got to think about your navigation. You got to think about rally points. You got to think about head counts. You got to think about terrain feature. You got to think about the enemy and booby traps and IEDs and all that stuff. But even with that, there's still a lot of empty space to fill up inside your head. And I recently took my kids out on patrol. And I guess to be grammatically correct, it was a hike in the civilian world. But in my mind, it was a patrol. It felt like a patrol. And, you know, it's the same thing. I mean, essentially you're moving from point A to point B. You set security when you get there. You set your layup point, which civilians call like a campsite. Then you sleep, and then you wake up, and then you do it again. And as I did that patrol, and since it had been a while since I had done a patrol, and because I was also watching my kids on their first patrol, I got to kind of revisit my little relationship that I have with patrolling over the years. And also as I saw them suffer and learn through their first patrol, I got to think into everything that I'd learned over the years from patrolling. And in doing that, I realized how much patrolling had taught me. So I'm there, I'm walking, and I'm thinking about all these things that I learned. Because again, when you're patrolling, you got time. Even if you're thinking about navigation, you're thinking about all these things. It doesn't matter. Even every piece of the job that you're focused on, it doesn't matter. There's still space to fill, and that's what happened. Your mind starts to think about all these things, and it dawned on me how much patrolling and marching had taught me, and how it's really a fundamental component in everything that I did in the SEAL teams and in the military. And like leadership, there's some fundamental principles that apply universally to so many things in life. And also, just like leadership, there's a certain aspect of patrolling and navigation that is as much art as it is science. And the science, of course, is relatively easy to teach. But the art, as always, the art is hard to teach. And finally, with this idea of navigation, of moving from point A to point B, which includes plotting a course and picking waypoints along the way and identifying it and avoiding obstacles en route and how to overcome unexpected obstacles and how and when and where to rest and everything else that navigation and patrolling includes. And all those things are things that you face as you navigate life. And as you set goals, as you establish where you're going.